I mean, was supporting in particular restaurant chain over another.
I just spent go and meet so people know.
Wait till they want to put in a Subway restaurant beside you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's one straight up, one on
She's
so. Yeah, there's one on Portland. There's also one in the Northeast, I guess.
This other guy,
Which it actually makes me it's just outside of that.
I mean, once you get beyond,
Drives me nuts.
I mean, which one is it? The one on
The restaurant is Brian Cooper's, and then where the pizza place used to be, that BP station has a Subway in the.
Yeah, so that's Rob's, that's
That's the
Max
problem.
had emailed me
This one I realized.
that could be on come, thinking he would
That
get everybody. You know that, Randall, right?
I gave him permission to stay home and not get us sick.
No, it's awesome.
And by the way, we are live. They're just trying to
Yeah.
All right, 7:04.
I'm just trying to ensure the video is working. And then I will be starting the meeting in 3 seconds.
Yeah. No, that's not one of my first choice. Sure, my Subway food.
Here we go. As I'm checking the internet, welcome to the May 5th Board of Trustees meeting of the Village of Flower Hill. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Suzanne?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a chock full agenda tonight. So let us, okay, it's the one. Let us start with public hearings. Can I have a motion to enter the public hearing portion of our Board of Trustees meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded by,
Second.
all in favor? First is the site plan review application of Lamani Restaurant. Mr. Albinski will be speaking.
Sure, so what I'm asking the board tonight is to refer this to zoning. I just got some new plans that I think are in your packet. It revises the variance letter, which I've updated. And it has to do with parking variance. Part of their application, I think as you recall, they're showing how they'll be doing their valet parking. And they'll also have an agreement with the neighbor, creating a pass-through and having evening use of their lot also to help with their parking.
Right.
So that will be presented to the zoning board. And one of the requirements that the village has requested is whatever agreement they have, it be on a continuing basis, and that we would have an update every year.
Right, to ensure that the parking situation is still active.
Right.
Right, okay. So I don't think we need to take any action tonight, correct?
No, I would just suggest that perhaps the matter could be adjourned without a set date at this point until the case is decided by BZA, which might affect the plans, and it can just be brought back before the board.
All right, well, I will make that motion.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Thank you.
Excellent. The next was going to be an application for decorative fence, but that's not going to happen tonight, so we'll go to the third. Proposed local law site plan review for special conditions. And what that is, we're out of order. That is going to allow us, the Board of Trustees, to require that land use applicants reimburse the village for any expenses that the village incurs in connection with a land use application. So currently, Village of Flower Hill taxpayers technically pay for these additional costs that an applicant would normally incur, but we'd be incurring. So in the case of large-scale development or any other types of subdivisions or some other planning type uses or even zoning uses, we'll get the applicant to be able to pay for these expenses so the taxpayers are not funding it. And this would be our, I guess, our second public hearing. It's our first.
This is the second reading of this particular proposal. Hold on.
So we can hold this over till next month, unless there's some questions.
Randall, just remind me give an example, like, of
Subdivision.
what might, so only like not small scale,
No, this
individual.
is for
Large, okay.
larger projects.
Okay.
If someone's trying to do a subdivision, someone's trying to do combine lots together, someone's trying to build something larger than allowable and they're in front of zoning or something like that.
So anything we would incur to review that.
This would be if we need to hire special engineers or other experts.
Okay.
So that normally, if that was to happen, let's make believe Frank is going to build an 8-story apartment building wants to build that on his property here.
It's only 6.
Sorry, 6 in this case. The village would be hiring all these technical experts to assess environmental concerns, all these other concerns. Why should the taxpayers pay for that if it's an entity that's trying to build it? So that's why we have that.
Okay.
And is there any limitation on that?
No, there would be a required deposit and it would have to be replenished if it, I think, hits the point of 20% depletion, they would need to replenish it. And no certificates of completion can be issued until any open fees are paid.
Is there any need to specify at what point this kicks in? Like, individual, you're looking to, I don't know, you live next door to the graveyard that we have that's a historic site, and you want to put a study, I'm just making this stuff up, right? You want to put a study on in addition to your home. Is that something that so nothing that has to do with an individual homeowner?
Well,
Is that in
it
here
could,
that
it
they
could,
noted?
but it could, but in most normal cases it wouldn't.
Okay.
Because the only thing that the individual would end up paying for would be a stenographer fee, publication fee, the normal. But this would only kick in if a board has the need to reach out to a special consultant. So it really would
Like
only
an
come up.
engineer.
Right, or a special environmental consultant.
So if I can restate it, so the normal procedure is that there are certain administration duties that the village performs that is just part and parcel of the way we run the government. There are other things that like it's that would cost. But when we want to engage additional resource, we get reimbursed for it. Is that
Correct.
If this board had a planning board, or if this village had a planning board, which it does not, the applicants for site plan review or larger site plan review would be required to put a deposit down for engineering or environmental review kind of thing.
right?
But without that, the village has picking up those costs when Peter feels it's outside of his scope, that he wants that extra.
So why don't we go to one case, recent case? So what happened, well, maybe we still were able to handle it within our core group, like Steve. But the landslide on Stony Town Road, all the consulting that was required in that, including, I think, some outside resource. How was that handled?
Yeah, that we're charging to those residents.
It was? Okay.
Yes.
But I
Yeah, we
just
got
want to
we had an
clarify,
engineer come. We had Mark Bellata came.
I'm sorry,
No, I said again, Mark Bellata.
Right, right.
And did,
but the village
Steve
still
was on that.
does recoup before, and that hasn't been changed. There's still a deposit that is used to cover newspaper publications,
Right.
stenographic. This just allows for the village, at any time there's a land use application, to collect the additional fees if you reach out for a consultant. And the applicant would be made aware of that.
Right.
You know, that they would have to be told, here's what's gonna happen, and then they would be billed for it.
And this is not a unique law. Other villages
No, it
have
makes
similar
sense,
laws.
makes sense.
It's just to be prepared if something big is to happening and traffic engineers and all that stuff. It's good to make the applicant.
Well, I mean, it's great for the residents, it protects them and it,
Correct.
both financially as well as from a
Yep.
point of view of.
Okay, thanks, I just want to understand.
All right, so I'll make no other questions. I will make a motion to have a public hearing, and public hearing number 2 for this at the June 2nd Board of Trustees meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Dorfman, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is the proposed local law on subdivisions and average density developments. Now, cheat sheet. As we discussed in the past, village code does not adequately address large lot development. And so we're trying to get ahead of that if there ever is an application for that. The purpose of average density development is to preserve open space where possible and environmental resources while allowing compact development. Standard subdivisions use open space without setting aside land as permanently protected open space. Average density subdivisions allow dwelling units to be grouped on those portions of a property most suitable for development while leaving substantial portions of the undeveloped open space. Adequate minimum lot sizes are provided to assure the health and safety of the residents of the subdivision. So basically, it's to help mitigate any large proposed developments where instead of it being possibly spread out and bad for the community, it gives the board the opportunity to allow a more compact development, let's say use the word development, and it preserves open spaces. So I would use an example of the golf course. If the golf course was to close, right now they could build, I think it's 1 acre zoned. So there's a certain amount of homes that would get built. You'd lose all the open space that they have. With this type of law in place, the Board of Trustees could hear for an application where it would be more condensed housing, let's say towards the middle of the property, and they would preserve all the green space around it. Now, it doesn't mean that's what we would do. It just gives the Board of Trustees the option in the future for these types of applications. That's all. It's to protect the environment. It's to protect the nearby residents. It's just to protect everybody. Peter, did I nail it correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. You've trained me well. Is there any questions from the board on this? Since this is only our first public hearing, I will make a motion to have the second public hearing at the June 2nd Board of Trustees meeting. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. See you at the June 2nd meeting. And then the last, even though we did approve the local law for car covers and registered vehicles, Mr. Blinkoff had some additional comments based on some feedback we received from our code enforcer.
Yes.
So I'll let Jeff describe it to
I had the
everybody.
chance to speak to Mr. Mancusi about it, and in terms of enforcement, I think if you'll recall, the way it was drafted before, it said that any vehicle that is either unlicensed or unregistered would be deemed illegal within the village. You had to have both, and that you had to have a car cover that would allow for code enforcement to see the license plate. Mr. Mancusi, in his discussions with, I think he was in a training, there was a concern about saying that the vehicle can't be unlicensed, that it should really focus on the registration. So what I've done is propose a minor change, and I have hard copies here. I wanted to explain this one first because it's really in light of a minor change. All I've done would be to propose a change so that we make it that a vehicle can't be unregistered in the village, and that if a license plate cannot be seen on the vehicle, there'll be a presumption that the vehicle is unregistered. Because quite often the code enforcement wouldn't be able to see the registration from the street, but they would be able to see a license plate or not a license plate. So I've just redrafted this, and I'll email this to everyone as well, and then ask that the clerk can post it to the village website as well. But this would just be in line with what code enforcement was asking for. It essentially accomplishes the same thing, but focuses on the registration as opposed to being unlicensed.
So it's just minor. It's just going to help our code enforcers do their job better and more efficiently, and to make these cases in court stronger.
And quite frankly, if, suppose somebody's license plate can't be seen, and the presumption is they're unregistered, if they then show proof of registration, that case will be dismissed. I mean, it's not gonna go anywhere.
As far as service vehicles, so that means like, Petro or, so do people understand that in an emergency, like if you have no heat at 11 o'clock at night, there could be the possibility that there's a plumber or somebody in front of your house? That would be a special case.
What is it? This is
It says service vehicles may be parked in front of sign yards only between 8 and 6. So I'm just thinking about what would happen, like if somebody in the winter has a heating emergency at 10 o'clock at night, which I've been there, I've had Petro come in 11 o'clock.
As of that, that's actually something that's in the code now, so I just carried that over from what's in the code now, but I think you're raising an interesting point. As long as we're making a change, I could add language that says absent emergency, they can only be there between that time.
We haven't had an issue with.
No, and enforcement's
Section C
not out
of the
at
code.
night, so it's not like,
It's
No one would-
a non-issue.
yeah, no one would.
It's an
police don't
issue
care.
for people who are leaving service vehicles in their driveways overnight, which we've had, and we've
Right.
enforced
Yes.
the code for that.
Yes,
Yeah, it's not meant for the emergency Petro. It's meant for the
gotcha.
guy with the plumbing truck who leaves it in his driveway 24/7. Who's running business at this house. So if there's no other questions on this, we will take a vote on this at the June 2nd Board of Trustees meeting.
So then a motion to carry this.
That was my motion, seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Lewandowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. I'd like to make a motion to leave the public hearing portion of the meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Public comment? Being no members of the public
Going all at once.
here, we will go to the next. Next portion, approval of the minutes of the April 7th, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to read this. If there are no questions, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Seconded by Ms. Dorfman. All in favor? Excellent. Treasurer's report. I'm going to make a motion to approve the expenditures of $215,391.43. And since Max is not here, we do not need to have him abstain because he just won't vote at all. Oh, thank you for coming in. I'd like to make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All in favor? Excellent. No one opposed.
Can I ask while we're doing this, have we had people opt out of the health plan?
We have somebody who wants to opt out.
So basically one person so far?
Correct.
Thank you.
There's a timing issue, I believe.
We have to have, I think, 5 months of living together with a domestic partner, and then now she's involved in the paperwork, doing what she has to do for paperwork. She's approving her insurance.
So once that happens, then that person will leave our insurance. Yes. But thank you for the question. Next, this is an interesting one. I need a motion to transfer a tree bond fund to the general fund. I believe, Marla, this is somebody who has opted not to replant a tree, correct?
Someone moved, did not replant, and they wanted to get their money back. And I explained that they gave up the right to that deposit because it was to replant the tree, which they didn't do. They moved in November.
So our only recourse really is to keep the money and make a motion to.
I'll make a motion to keep it.
Thank you. Oh, and second, that'll be motion seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Lewandowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Budget transfer resolution. All right, so this is a new one for us. What boards typically do is either in the middle of the year or towards the end of the year, anytime during the year, they can start making transfers to the budget. Now, you don't make any transfers to your revenue. These are all only on the expense side. So as we're getting close to the end of our year, we looked at some of the categories where our costs were over budgeted, and then we saw some areas where our costs are below budget. So we're allowed by resolution to make adjustments to the budget as a revised budget. And this is something we will be doing as a board going forward in 25, 26 as well, probably towards the middle of the year as we start seeing some of our expenses going up and going down. So this is something many other villages do and other entities. It just helps us have a better budget in essence and to correct for things that were unforecasted. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to move some monies over into building materials and supplies. We went over on that. Obviously, central garage and gas, because gas and oil costs went up, and also health insurance employee benefits, which I'll get into in a second. We would, to match that 52,000, we would decrease street maintenance contracted services, and that was for road paving that we didn't do in this financial year. So the health insurance employee benefits, I reviewed this with Suzanne earlier. We had some higher unexpected health insurance from NISHIP, and that is why we need to make that adjustment. And hopefully,
Is that because one plan went bankrupt, and they had to put us on the other, they had it on the other plan?
I don't know, I wasn't involved in making this budget, so I'm not sure.
No, I mean, not to my knowledge, it's just the cost of the health insurance has increased.
The health insurance increases in January. In fairness to all of us who have ever made budgets, in June. And you don't know what it is. It could be 3%, it could be 10%. And that, on these numbers, that's pretty easy to get to.
No, I know the state had created a separate civil service program to kind of compete with that program. And when they and it was initiated basically upstate, and when they added a bunch of people from downstate area, it got bankrupted within months. Because it was suggested that people went to the doctors more often down here. But then what that meant was people had to revert to the higher plan again, which cost more money.
Okay. I don't know.
That's why I
think you
asked.
were on the lower plan.
We can look into that.
There is no lower plan anymore, so that's my point.
All right.
There's nothing to look into. I was just curious if that was the reason. It seems like a big, we under budgeted by, that's a lot of money,
It is a lot of money, but our budget last year was 296, what we spent for the year, and this year it's over 3.
the second area is we're going to increase the code enforcer public safety, and that was the patrol.
I'm sorry, who made that motion?
Oh,
Who made the
can't we do it all as
Oh,
one?
yeah, you can. I thought-
That's what, I'm just going over each of the three adjustments, in essence. We're increasing the code enforcement budget by 36,000, that's for patrol. And we are able to decrease the village clerk treasurer salaries due to the change of employee, and decrease the engineering professional services because that is usually tied to paving. And since we didn't do any paving this year, that's kind of an offset. So that's why it's 36 one way, 36 the other. And then lastly, I'm going to want to increase our snowplow supplies and materials because this year we had a bad winter, I will quote and say. And to offset that, we did not have quite as many judgments and claims as we budgeted for. So all these balance out, and next year you'll expect to see more budget adjustments. So I'm going to make a motion to make the three budget adjustments as stated here in resolution number 7.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I-
Excellent. Next. New business. Verizon franchise agreement. Mr. Blinkoff and I attended a public hearing last week at the Great Neck South Middle School where we had a presentation from Verizon about their franchise agreement. We will go to executive session to discuss some of the legal specifics, but what I can say publicly is they are looking to change the franchise agreement. It would be a 5-year franchise agreement instead of a 15-year agreement, which I believe is what's currently in place. They're looking to do a 3% franchise tax that goes to the villages, and then a 1% tax that goes, and again, this is only on those people subscribing to Verizon television, not the internet and not phone. It's only for television, which we all know is a decreasing amount of people because most people, a good amount of people are now subscribing to over-the-top services like Netflix or YouTube TV. They even in the documentation which we gave you a copy of, I think they said they decreased by like 19% of people moving to streaming services. And I think the answer is something about 24%. Yep, 24% in the last 3 years. So there's a lot of people leaving traditional cable TV. The 1% that they also want to charge is for going for North Shore TV. That was my big concern about this whole franchise agreement. I don't know about anybody here. You could raise your hands. Does anyone here watch North Shore TV on their cable channels?
Where is it? I've never heard.
I believe it's channel 20.
I have DirecTV, so I don't know where we.
So you don't get
We
it.
don't get a lot, yeah. you don't
And
get
I have
12.
YouTube TV, so I don't get that. If you're ever interested, I would tell you.
Optimum probably.
I would tell you all to go to the North Shore TV website and see the wonderful programming that they have. Northwell Health Lecture Services, a chat with Glendora.
Now I've seen.
Right.
When's the last time? I don't know if it's repeats or what, but yes, Glendora is still the longest running and most
Yes, it's got to be the long.
awarded cable public access channel on the planet.
I vote for my Glendora. I want my Glendora.
Access Spotlight, Dr. Passes Presents,
Oh, Dr. Red, that's the dentist.
The Brick Wall, Cinema Insomnia. These are all
How am I
great-
living without this?
The Lisa Baxter Show. I mean, this is great stuff.
How am I surviving without
Right.
these
So,
shows?
Catalyst Wrestling. This must be very exciting. My concern is why are we taxing our residents 1%, an extra 1% on their cable bill for a service that I'm not sure anyone in our, and we asked the North Shore TV people, do they have any information on any Flower Hill residents who are,
Oh, it's only on cable vision.
no, it's also, the Verizon has it as
Oh,
well.
Brian says it too?
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
I asked if
Files, yeah.
I asked if they have any records of any Flower Hill residents creating material, and they weren't able to provide that information. And I asked them for ratings information. I'm curious how many people actually watch this, and they weren't able to provide that information.
You know, we can rent it and make a show. We could do
We
like
can.
a Flower Hill.
You could do. Meet the
Should do Mitchell, like
trustees.
History of Flower Hill. That would be really good.
We do a great job.
Riveting.
So then I guess it sounds like you want to help
I know,
tax
you
our,
gotta like.
so you want to help tax our residents for this.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know.
I just wanted to lay it out there. There's some legal issues which we will discuss
Do
in executive
podcasts.
session.
Let's do a
We are
podcast,
required
man.
to hear this franchise. We're required to have a public hearing on the franchise agreement and vote on this by 60 days from last week's meeting. If I had a quorum at the meeting last week, we actually could have voted there. A few villages had a quorum of their boards, but it's okay because I'm not necessarily ready to vote for this. So that's all I wanted to say on the Verizon franchise agreement. Covered porches. This is a very important topic, near and dear to Peter Albinski's heart.
Well, you're overstating it a little bit, but.
Well, it makes it more exciting.
Okay.
So
The big building.
Gary will remember this from many years ago, where we passed a local law, I'll say, allowing a homeowner, when they're building their home, to take 10% of the total floor area and be able to use it for a porch without any penalty for the floor area. And the reason we did that is we felt as a community, you know, it's nice to have residents out in front of their homes, watching the kids on the bikes, talking to each other. That's why I built a covered porch in my front yard many years before this law came into effect. And it's helped. You know, we're getting more porches built on homes where before, if a developer wants to maximize the square footage, they wouldn't waste square footage on a porch. They use it all on the home. However, what happened now with our law is some people are getting crafty, and there's a loophole that's allowing that 10% in essence to be used on an accessory structure. So if someone's building a pool cabana, let's say, they now can build a giant pool cabana with a giant porch around it. And that really wasn't the intent of this original local law. So the suggestion that came in, and Jeff and Peter are working on this, is that 10% bonus should only be applied to the principal dwelling to close that loophole.
Primary structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So I don't know if there's any
Wasn't
questions.
there a calculation, a covered porch, you get 1-for-1 bonus for it, right? It's a 100% bonus.
But it
Up
just,
to
up to
a point.
10%, so if
Up to 10% of the FAR.
of
the
the
rest of it.
FAR, you can have as covered porches that don't count towards the FAR.
Right, that's
If it's
what-
more than that, then it gets added to
Right,
FAR.
right.
But
Right,
right
that's what
now,
I
it
remember,
doesn't, it doesn't specify, because our FAR includes accessory structures,
Mhm.
cabanas, sheds, whatever. You could apply that 10% to the total FAR, which could be on a cabana. And it could be a very large, so if you have a
500 square foot
5,000 square
cabana.
foot house and you have no porches on the house, you could have 500 square feet attached to a cabana, which I think for a rear yard is just too large a structure.
Oh, yeah.
That's
It's
where-
the size of the cabana.
Right.
So that's why I suggested to make the change.
It goes around the spirit of the
What
original.
clever person found that loophole? Or
I
architect?
forget, but it's come up a couple times. So. They didn't go to the extreme, but there were porches on the house, but that's the possibility.
Don't you have to have a porch to get the bonus?
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, just,
so you can build that, so if your maximum is 5,000 square feet, say, you can build a house of 5,000 square feet with no porches. And you can build another 10% over that. But it only kicks in if you have a porch.
okay, if you're limited to 5,000 square feet and you build a house of 4,000 square feet, you can only build a 500 square foot porch before it starts.
A 400 square
I'm
foot.
sorry, 400
You
square.
don't go by what the maximum allowed, you go by what the actual is. So if you build a 2,000 square foot house, you can only build 200 square feet of porch. It's in proportion to the house.
Okay. So, so 400, which means you could build another 600 square foot of porch without breaking the FAR. No, another 1,000 square feet.
400's the max.
Yeah, so if you build a
That's it.
4,000 square foot house.
So you can build, in theory, you could build a 1,400 square foot.
Everything
Okay.
over the 10%.
And so what
goes
they
to
would
the
do is
quarter.
transfer some of that, I got it.
Yeah.
Transfer some of that to an accessory structure. Got it.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'm going to make a motion to hold the public hearing for this at the June 2nd Board of Trustees meeting. Second by Mr. Smith. All in favor? Aye. Wonderful. Next, prior written notice. So thank you, Marla, for pointing this out. There was an interesting article in our most recent NICOM journal about prior written notice. Jeff, I'll mangle this one. Go for it.
Sure, so what happened was, to back up, the way the code is written, unless the village has received prior written notice from someone about a defect, If that person then sues the village claiming that the village was negligent as a result of that defect, we would move to dismiss and say we didn't get prior written notice, the case can't go forward. The case came through the court system and went up to the Court of Appeals because the person who was suing argued that by sending something via whatever system the village had, a sort of, permitting system, or say on their website, by just sending a quick note through that saying I found this defect, that should fit with the prior written notice requirement. And the village had opposed and said, no, that wasn't sufficient notice, but the Court of Appeals has held, yes, it is, it's sufficient. If your written notice provision in your code doesn't specify the manner in which you're to receive the prior written notice, if somebody sends an email or posts it to your website, or any number of other things, you should have seen it, and that's enough. So the thought would be to change the village code, just to say, you're required to give prior written notice, and here's how you're required to provide it. So that way the village will have a mechanism to know, here's where we're gonna look, and here's where we'll keep track of the prior written notices. I just think it protects the village better to change the code.
So it's like the pothole law.
Correct. That's
Right.
basically what it is.
Right.
But the pothole law, you don't have to do written notice. You can just call it into 311.
In the city.
Yeah.
Right.
But not to us.
Not that.
but
So
we
this
require-
really protects the village
So if
against-
someone calls and says there's a dangerous condition on, Cherry Lane, what would the response be here from the office? Please put it in writing? Or would that be
Thank you very
considered-
much for your call.
Would that be considered in court a sufficient notification?
Not in court. I mean, it would be sufficient enough for me to tell Rich to go take a look over there and do something, but not for court.
But it's in the case of somebody who might email someone at Village Hall who's not even in charge of this.
Mhm.
And it goes to, I don't know,
what you're saying.
Deputy Mayor Janice's email address.
I'm just wanting to know, if I was the plaintiff, I would
Send me
argue,
something.
I would argue that, yeah, I had a phone call with Marla Wilson on, so then I told her about it, she said she would check it out, and then somebody got hurt.
Could we put a link, so on our website, that says, and say, after you talk to the person, could you go to the website and complete this form? We have the form, download the form, and you can mail it in, or I don't know if you have if it's interactive, our website, but
Well, the idea is not to not fix what's wrong, because I think we're very good at that. The idea is to make us less susceptible to litigation. That's it.
But isn't an email written, isn't email a written, you could say, it's a
But Jeff is
written,
explaining.
I wrote an email, a letter, and I sent it
This is
to
what I
you.
do for a living,
Thank you.
Oh, there's more counsel over here.
Yes.
Counsel.
and I do represent municipalities. Bottom line is, we can set up
Keep them over there.
whatever method we want
They are good.
to accept notice. So what this is, from understanding it correctly, because we have nothing really in the package about it, is we want to have a public hearing on what would constitute notice to the village so that we would have legal liability. So the things that you just talked about, we can talk about all those things. We could say, you have to have the village must have prior notice of the defective condition. Prior notice is limited to, and if you want, an email to Marla, an email to that, a phone call, whatever we decide. But what it does is it limits our liability to whatever notice, like the city with the sidewalks, it has to be written, and it's gotta be a mail. It's gotta be something mailed to the city office. Does it mean that it's gonna get fixed? Not in the city, but I think in our village it means something probably would get fixed. But we can control what we would consider to be notice. The import of the case that Jeff is talking about is that it took the words written notice, suggested they were ambiguous, so that an email to one of the seven of us might have been considered enough notice. Whereas one of the seven of us may not, wouldn't think to do anything about it. Maybe we should, but if we didn't, all of a sudden, that's considered notice to the entire village. An email to, I don't know, our treasurer, maybe because it's ambiguous. So what we need to do is to discuss what would constitute notice and adopt it on our own. What we think is sufficient so that the village should address it. I would suggest an email to a board member is a foolish thing to include in that list. The email to Marla, maybe that's a little bit different because that's kind of your job. I would suggest an email to the highway department should not be included because even though that's technically their job is really is to follow the directives of their supervisors and things like that. So we can decide amongst ourselves what it is, but the import of the case was simply that it opened up that particular village to all sorts of, because the village didn't have a set definition for what notice was going to be.
And this is on the recommendation of Nikon, so usually.
And that's a 0.4, I go by the hour.
I thought that there was just something.
So we'll discuss it at the next public meeting. Jeff will draft some local law, and you all, if you have suggestions before the meeting, after you get Jeff's note, please send it in. We can modify accordingly. Again, it's really just to protect our residents. There are plenty of nuisance lawsuits. I believe we had one 2 years ago. Someone tripped and fell on a crack, not in Flower Hill, and we were still sued.
Yes.
Yes,
How's that happen?
it just, because you sue everybody.
Sue everybody.
It didn't get very far.
So if I fall here, I can sue Stanford, Connecticut?
You don't even have to fall, you could just sue them.
Yes.
You know what it takes a lawsuit? It takes a piece of paper, you go down to the.
Yeah, I'm aware
And you file.
Yeah, we're in business.
So is there then?
Architects are often
I make a
targeted.
motion that this be on for public hearing next month.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Dorfman, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Highway Superintendent report. Our highway superintendent is on vacation this week. You got a copy of his report. All is looking good, even with this lovely rain we've been having. Building superintendent report, Mr. Albinski.
Okay, this was the April 28th meeting of the Architects Review Committee. We had 6 items on our meeting. First was 35 Wood Hill, second floor addition, exterior alterations. This was a return. We actually got another architect involved with this, which was a good thing. And we had a few comments left, and that was approved with those conditions. 1025 Northern Boulevard, that's the office building that had the fire. We had some comments about the design, about, you can see one a little bit better adhesion between the top and the bottom. They have since looked at the project structurally, and it was determined that the upper 2 floors were not salvageable. The first floor was, so they're going to take down the top 2 floors, and that changed the design a little bit from what we first saw. And we're still asking for some revisions to that, and also a 3D rendering to help us understand how the building looks.
Okay.
From the zoning board, we had 48 Dogwood. That was an aggregate side yard setback, and it was for a reconstruction of the garage and some additions. That project we approved as it was submitted. 91 Fernwood, new dwelling. This is in the middle of zoning, but we've offered they could come to architect's review because it may affect the zoning. The committee felt that there needed to be some reworking of the massing, I'll call it, of the structure, because this property has a very severe slope to the rear yard, and we were looking to maybe step down the forms down the hill, with the hill work better with the hill. And we felt that they should come back to us with that revision before they go to zoning, because it may affect lot coverage and maybe some other.
Is that mid-century modern kind of Walter Gropius thing is that the house we're talking about?
Next.
It would be next to
Next-
the empty,
next to
it's
it.
the empty
South.
lot
South.
next to it.
Yeah, right, it's a vacant lot now. Vacant lot for many years. 50-foot grade change.
I know, you know.
Many years, I'd like to.
I've been in that house, that post.
The one that's, yeah.
Peter,
It's like, whoa.
I'd like to say that it was always a vacant lot, and it was never developed. It's not just many years, it's never been a developed lot.
Fernwood? It's like on the overlook.
So you know when you're coming over the viaduct,
Yeah,
coming
the
to Flower Hill, and you
viaduct.
see
Oh,
those
yeah.
houses up there?
Yeah,
The glass house with the red bridge.
Yeah, there's one glass house has a bridge.
Place.
You have to go. It's scary, but it's a cool house. But it's like suspended over.
Yeah.
It's a very modern, well, it's like a mid-century modern kind of.
Okay.
But I thought that was getting knocked down. I thought.
No, it's the empty lot next door to it. They want to develop that lot.
It's a narrow pie-shaped lot.
So it's good. The other house is not being demolished. That's good because that's a cool house.
They spent a lot of money.
Well, the
fixing
bridge, they
it
had
up.
trouble
The
with
front, they need
hurricane
to
or
do
whatever. The
something with
bridge.
the front.
They had the bridge collapsed,
Right,
the
the bridge
basement
collapsed,
flooded,
yeah.
and the house, because I know someone lives nearby, the roof of that house, because it was a flat roof, they
Yeah,
were
it's
always
a flat
having
roof.
flooding problems in that house.
You know.
There's a dumbwaiter, and it's a very cool house to live in.
No, I haven't ever been there once. Yeah.
All right, next, Mr. Obinsky. New apps.
21 Ridge Drive West, new dwelling. We had a number of comments that were, or kind of red marked on a drawing, and they were agreeable to that. So with those conditions, we're suggesting that you approve that. And the last one, 65 Elderfields, renovated existing dwelling, proposed rear covered patio, and proposed detached garage. We approved it as submitted, but there's actually two separate applications here. One is for the house. The detached garage will require a variance for floor area. Again, we add floor area to our detached accessory structures. So we approved the architecture for both of those, but the garage does have to go to zoning.
I have a question, Peter. Do you know of any work going on at 21 Wood Valley?
Top of my head, no.
Okay. Because there's been a tremendous amount of construction debris in front of the house all last week. And Saturday, there was a pile this high of sheetrock, of studs, of paint. And I saw the garbage collector guys this morning struggling to take this basically 4x4 sheet of drywall, drywall. And so I was wondering, what our policy is about construction debris at the sidewalk.
I'll look into any
Because I think
applications we have.
contract, you should have it removed by contract. It should not be sitting there all weekends. And this was a lot. So it looked like a major renovation. So I just want to know if they're.
Well, yeah,
It's-
permitting
it's-
is the first thing I'll look into, yeah.
We warned them once before, a couple of weeks ago. They had a lot of stuff out for, I think Jerry went by, or Jack, because they had all weekend, they had just piles of furniture. And so they must have done a renovation, but I don't think it's fair for our sanitation guys to have to remove heavy construction debris. It's dangerous. And,
All right, we'll have code look into it.
Is there a limitation on how much they take in a given day?
There should be. So
They should be,
we'll-
but
we
I
will
think they
look
just
into it,
want to do the right thing and they want to take the garbage. So
Nice of them.
I guess.
they're very nice guys, and that's why we kind of look out for
There
them.
should be more
And,
conditions about that.
yeah, and I know when I just did my project, I made the contract to take it away.
Yeah.
It's like $100. Took it and dumped it. It's like I wasn't going to leave that on the
Okay,
street.
I'll follow up on it.
All right.
Thank you.
So that's not part of this report, but I'm going to make a motion to accept the Architectural Review Committee recommendations of the April 28th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lewandowski will be abstaining, as traditionally. We don't need a DPW report because it's the same as Highway Superintendent report. Attorney's report, Mr. Blumenkoff.
Yeah, there were two matters that the board was on, that took action on. One was at 125 Northwoods Road. They were seeking 3 variances. The ones marked as second and third, the board had pretty much dealt with in the first hearing. The That didn't appear that they have any impact on the surrounding environment. The waterfall, as it's described, is actually something that almost is not even a permanent structure, and wasn't deemed that it would have an impact on the surrounding area. The second patio, which already exists, is as you can see, it's only 0.8 feet out of line and was deemed to be a fairly de minimis problem or potential problem. The issue that the board had was with the driveway. They were proposing to have that at 21 feet wide at the edge of the road and up to the property line. The board of trustees had, I think in 2003, had changed the code to say that it should only be 16 feet wide. So after several hearings, the applicant amended the application and ultimately proposed to lessen the request so that the driveway would be 18 feet wide from the property line right to the curb cut into the street, so that it would be straight down and would not have as much of an impact. And with that, the board approved that variance is amended and the other two. The second was on 24 Binding Heights Road. And this property, there were really two, the same type of variance, but really two different types of facts. The first was for the proposed fence, which is in the front yard, and the board took into account that if the homeowner was to put shrubs on the outside of the fence, they'd originally proposed it on the inside. If they put them on the outside, they'd reduce it and screen it, and it really wouldn't be visible. The board had no problem with that and approved it. What the board denied.
And it's an estate type fence,
It
correct?
is.
It's not solid. Okay.
And this is a corner lot.
It's a corner lot.
It's a corner lot which the board had looked at before.
And then what the Board of Zoning questioned was the proposed set of gates, which you've heard this issue before. And what was explained to the applicant was that the Board of Zoning really had difficulty in considering granting a variance for that type of thing. As Mr. Obinsky has pointed out before, there is within the code the possibility that somebody could come before the Board of Trustees with a decorative gate that's more, which is less opaque. And the applicant, I believe, intends to do that. As you saw tonight, it was potentially to be on the agenda tonight, but I guess they didn't bring in their application. So the Board of Zoning denied that portion of the variance, but it was with the understanding that the applicant intends to bring a separate application to the Board of Trustees. The gates that they had designed at that time were not very transparent. They were fairly opaque, so I expect they'll be making some changes, and that is my report.
Thank you. Mayor's report. All right. I have a bunch of stuff. I don't know.
The Knicks are tied 38.
It's all right. They'll end up losing because Claire says go. Oh, yeah.
Boo.
That's why I keep you guys on both sides. So we don't brawls on here. Excellent news. We got our 2025 New York State Controller Fiscal Stress Monitoring Report. And once again, we scored a no designation score, which is the lowest possible rating. So thank you for everyone involved in our finances and budgeting.
Best possible.
Sorry?
Does that mean the best possible rating as well?
It's like golf, lower is better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We got an eagle. Frank and I attended the NCVOA meeting where we had a very interesting presentation about from the town of North Hempstead's attorney who are suing the FAA about airplane noise. I attended the NCPD Commissioners Community Council meeting. I got a tour of their new training city or training village. It's an unbelievable thing that Commissioner Ryder was able to build. There's like a literal, almost working Bola gas station, a church, which can become a mosque and become a temple. They've actually got a Long Island Railroad train there, and they put a platform. There's various homes. There's a police precinct that they built, and a bank, and it's all for training purposes. So, and a real street with real stoplights. And you really would think you're in a little downtown somewhere, and it's all for helping training the recruits with real life scenarios instead of just classroom training. I think it's phenomenal. I attended a NICOM elected officials workshop. which was a very good refresher course on the essentials of village government. I learned a couple of new little tricks that I didn't think I knew, but I learned it. Marla and I met with Joey Ramirez, who is our new Nassau County Regional Representative from the Governor's Office, replacing our good friend Stevens Martinez, who got promoted. And that's on what I attended. I got security patrol news. So this was a busy month for us. I sent the board an email a couple of days ago at 2:15 in the morning. One of the security officers observed a suspicious Mercedes SUV with a defective driver's side taillight stopped in the middle of the street. As the officer approached the vehicle, it sped away from the location because they saw our lovely yellow flashing lights. Security followed the vehicle at a safe speed to attempt to get the license plate number. They got a partial. The vehicle fled southbound on Port Boulevard, driving on the wrong side of the road. I would like to say that was definitely somebody who was up to no good. I actually spoke to one of the officers today, and the police were made aware of this from the patrol. And they looked that night to try to find the bad person. They did not find them. And the patrol continued to patrol that area to keep an eye on if they were going to come back. And luckily they didn't. One night at 12:15 in the morning, patrol found someone trespassing in the park, asked them kindly to leave, and the person left, which is good. We don't know what people are going to do in our park in the middle of the night. At 1:30 in the morning one night, a resident's car was open, and the officer closed it for them, which is very nice. And on 1:15 in the morning on Cardinal Road, they observed an open garage door. They remained on site to monitor. NCPD was notified, who came up and rang the bell. Homeowner was notified, thanked them, and closed the garage door. So we had one rather serious event, one interesting trespassing, and two instances where patrol was very helpful. So our patrol is very busy, and I thank them for continuing to do what they're doing. Webster, I'll leave these other things in the newsletter. Webster Avenue Bridge update. The water well. Katie Oppo Run is coming up June 8th. So those people who haven't signed up to run. You gonna do it again this year, Mary Jo?
The same day as Science Doc, isn't it? Sunday?
It is, yeah.
Which all of you should be coming to Science Doc.
Isn't that right?
I guess so.
What date is that?
So I'll see.
Okay,
TBD.
all right.
And thank you for your support. If you
Sunday? Sorry.
haven't, I do have the link if you can, if you want to.
If you want to
Make
put
a
that,
donation.
if you want to give that to me, I'll put in the newsletter. I can do that.
Absolutely.
So please get it to me tomorrow because the newsletter will come out on
As you know, I'm a full
Wednesday.
disclosure, I'm executive
Yes,
board chair. Okay, yeah, cool. I'll do that.
excellent. And then lastly, hold on, do I have a last link? I apologize.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I definitely come.
do I need to make a motion to hold a public hearing at the next board meeting for the fireworks?
All right, well, that's. I mean,
I assume that's going to be
an
at
public
the,
hearing. I don't think you have to make a motion for it. It's-
Well-
Because they're submitting an application, it has to be a public hearing.
right. I don't need to make a motion to hold a public hearing?
They're going to submit the application as long as it's coming up. I would
Okay.
suggest we just
You personally?
schedule it for.
No, Mayor, everything goes to Mayor. Yeah.
We
Um,
have submitted.
Yep, so I don't have the date. It's a Wednesday this year with the rain date as a Thursday. And that Friday is the 4th or the 3rd, I forget. But it's interesting, they're going for a Wednesday night instead of the normal night. But we'll hear what they have to say at the June Board of Trustees meeting. And then lastly, I will ask if there's a trustees report, perhaps from Mary Jo or Gary about beautification committee.
I'll let you.
Yeah, we'll, oh, have we, I guess we met after the last meeting, yeah.
We did,
So
yes.
yes, we met with Kevin Nally and we agreed that we are going to target 3 islands, Country Club, the one by Joanne's on Northern Boulevard, and what's that called again?
Mayberry.
Bayberry.
Rolling Wood.
TBD is the St. Francis Island, pending any update on what the Department of Transportation comes up with a timeline, is that right? I think in the mayor's letter, we really wanted to emphasize to people that this is a work in progress and that at the recommendation of our professional landscaper, since we do not have irrigation, we will not be commencing planting until the fall, but that in the meantime, under his supervision, some significant cleanup has happened on a number of the islands. So I did reach out to Rich, I didn't know he's on vacation, and I said, for instance, Country Club, can you take the dead stuff out in the meantime, because otherwise we're waiting a whole year, and whatever. Take mulch and grass, and he will take care of that. So I would say if there's other minimal projects that we could keep these islands, looking okay until we do the overhaul, we can just bring it to either Gary or my attention.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, just definitely emphasize that in the,
I think we can do still some additional signage management on that island.
Oh,
was
I
looking
know.
at it the other day,
So
so I'll
bad.
talk to Rich about it.
yeah,
Is that it?
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to update everyone on Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee. The meeting last month, the committee did adopt a policy of allowing the committee to either be brought in front of it by one of its members, a suggestion or recommendation to do a study for whatever potential projects may be out there, or that the committee might or that the affected entity might bring it to the committee as well. And that by a vote of majority of the committee, that then could mean that the director and whatever other resources of the committee could be directed towards putting together a report on whatever that case may be. So,
Good. So it sounds like they listened to
so
our
in
concerns.
respect, and respect to the project, the proposed project in Roslyn, there was a decision, a vote taken to recommend doing that kind of study. Apply to that.
Good. And if they find nothing wrong, that's great. But it's good for them at least to have another set of eyes on these projects. Now that Hempstead Harbor has changed their policy, do you think you can get our friends at Manhasset Bay to do the same?
Well,
Because their answer to me was, well, Hempstead Harbor
yeah.
doesn't do it either. Well, now the answer to them
I think
is that they do.
Sarah will need to talk to Eric, and
All right.
she kind of defers to him.
Listen, it's just here to protect the environment, which is, I think, what their charter is. So I'm very thankful, Gary, that you helped shepherd this change with them. So thank you very much. That being said, I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a potential legal issue. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
I,
I'm going to turn the camera off. I'll be back in 3 seconds. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Suzanne.
Can I go?
Good night, Peter.
Bye, Peter.